All right, now for the efficacy. And this, quite honestly, when we first saw it, blew us out of the water. There are very few vaccines that have efficacy of 95%. Measles with 2 doses exceeds that. Shingrix with 2 doses is about at 95%. Nothing else really gets to that level. One of the ways to really understand the efficacy is through this kind of slide. This shows the cumulative incidence of symptomatic infection from the time of the first vaccine. And you can see that for the first 14 days, the curves overlap perfectly. And then they begin to separate 14 days after the first dose. This suggests that there's at least some immunologic protection after about 14 days after the first dose, which is about exactly when you'd expect antibodies levels to start to rise. And then after 21 days, you can see very low accumulation of new cases among the vaccinees. So does it work to give a single dose? The point estimate of efficacy is about 50% for that first month. But remember that everyone in this trial went on to get a second dose. So it really cannot tell us anything about the efficacy of single dose. And even though people have talked about whether that would allow us to vaccinate more people, we just don't know whether it would work. Here is the meat of the presentation. You can doze off after this. Primary efficacy analysis included about 170 cases, relatively small number. There will be more cases accumulating in the follow-up, but the estimate of the efficacy was 95% with a lower 95% confidence interval of 90%. So this vaccine is at least 90% efficacious, even if you do an enormous trial. The efficacy was similar in those younger than 55 and those over than 55. And then in this slide, if you look in the box, you can see that, again, the efficacy was virtually identical throughout men and women, people from different racial groups, ethnic groups, and in the different areas where the trials were undertaken. And here you see the efficacy among people without any comorbidity in the top line, 94%. 94.7%, and then people with varying comorbidities. And strikingly, the efficacy is good in all of these groups. Now, people who were undergoing active cancer treatment, who were severely immunosuppressed, were not included. But among these participants with underlying diseases, the efficacy remained in the 95% range. The severe disease analysis is a little bit more complicated because there are two definitions which give you two rather different numbers, but I think the overall sense is about the same. The FDA definition of severe disease gives you a total of 1 case among vaccinees and 9 among placebo recipients, but many of these severe cases occurred before the second dose. So if you look at just those who had disease after receiving 2 doses, there was 1 case in the recipients and 3 in the placebo recipients. Both of these give you an estimate of vaccine efficacy that's significant, that is noticeable, but it is not statistically very precise. And for the standard definition, it is not statistically significant. The FDA uses a CDC definition, which is, CDC has a definition which the FDA does not use, which was also used in the analysis. And this gives you 1 case in the vaccine recipients and 14 in the placebo recipients, which does give you a statistically significant efficacy estimate for people getting severe protection against severe disease of 92%. So however we slice it, there's at least a strong signal of protection from severe disease. What we don't have, and somebody will ask about this no doubt, is any data as of right now about protection against asymptomatic shedding. And that's that is data that we're going to hopefully get answers on in the January-February time point. So what about people who were previously infected with the virus who got vaccinated anyway? If you knew that you'd been infected, you were not supposed to sign up for the trial, but when they tested people for antibody and for PCR, they did actually find that about 1,300 people were either actively or previously infected. There were no increased side effects or safety signals in that group, but what they did see is that among both placebo recipients and people who got the vaccine, There were 9 cases and 10 cases, respectively, among people who'd been previously infected. This doesn't tell us much about efficacy, but what it does confirm is that people who've been previously infected can be reinfected. This is something we know, but this gives us an actual rate of about 1 per patient year, 1 per 100 patient year, or 0.1 per patient year.